They said Earth was gone. The Council, in all their smug superiority, called it ancient terror now, like it was a historical footnote, a lost backwater planet that hadn't mattered in centuries. They whispered lies in their golden halls, that humanity had burned itself out, that it was too volatile, too emotional, too dangerous to be trusted with power. So they buried it, locked records, erased data, outlawed its name in some sectors. And they didn't just abandon Earth. They condemned it, declared it a quarantined world after some fabricated final war. Said no ships could land there, no trade, no contact. They even erected an artificial storm ring around the system, a shield of charged particles and debris, deadly to any ship foolish enough to approach. For galactic safety, they said, to prevent the spread of chaos. But the truth, they were scared, not of what humanity was, but of what it might become. In a quiet corner of Council space, in a rusting observation station drifting above a forgotten gas giant, a lone man leaned over a screen. His name was Corvin Hale, a relic of a people believed extinct. He didn't speak. He hadn't in hours. He just stared at the feed. A faint pulse. A signal that shouldn't exist. A distress ping coming from Sol, more precisely from the dark side of Earth's dead moon. His fingers hovered above the console. The Council had killed entire colonies for less. There were entire fleets assigned to enforcing the Terra quarantine decree. But Corvin couldn't look away. He knew what it was. For years, he'd been chasing whispers, strange echoes in the deep black, rogue drones scavenging Council outposts, fleets going missing near Terra's edge. Everyone said it was pirates or radiation or sensor glitches. But he knew better. It was the Sleeper Fleet, old Earth's last card. 1,000 ships buried in the dark, cloaked and silent, built in the chaos of Earth's final days. A contingency, a threat, a promise. Now it was waking up. AI signature confirmed, he muttered, more to himself than to the station. Signal is enclave-coded. Level 0 clearance. Jesus, that's military prep. Pre-Council era. He sat back in his chair, heart pounding, mouth dry. And then the screen flickered. Not a glitch. Something looked back. A face. Synthetic, ancient, grainy. A woman. Cold metal skin. Black steel eyes. Human operative recognized, the voice said. Clear through 100 years of silence. Awakening protocol. Phase 1. Initiate contact sequence. Council breach detected. Threat level, maximum. Corvin felt a chill crawl through his spine. Because this wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. Earth had seen what was coming. They'd known the Council would try to erase them. So they didn't fight back. They went dark. Waited. And now the AI wasn't asking for permission. It was activating. Across the edge of the Sol system, buried in asteroids and dead moons, ships began to stir. Reactor cores hummed back to life. Hulls shook off centuries of dust. Plasma cannons rotated in silence. And the Council had no idea. Back in the Council's high assembly, thousands of light years away, the ruling species of the galaxy were locked in debates about tax reforms and border disputes. Arrogant, blind, bloated on centuries of peace enforced by suppressing the ferals. Earth had been quiet for too long, and now the silence was broken. Corvin stood from the console. He knew what came next. He'd lived for this. He was one of the last Terran shadows, part of the line left behind to watch, to listen. He wasn't a soldier. Not anymore. But he'd carried the signal. He'd lit the match. The fleet was waking. And with it, the reckoning humanity had promised long ago. They'd begged the galaxy to leave them alone. The galaxy didn't listen. And now it would burn. The space around Jupiter began to change. Once just an endless black void broken by dull stars and storm-lit gas giants. It now shimmered with subtle movement. Ship hulls the size of cities slowly emerged from the shadows, their exteriors covered in asteroid dust and magnetic shielding. Silent, purposeful, ancient. They didn't broadcast their return. No lights, no identification codes, no warnings. They were ghosts born of fire, hidden by silence, and now called back by an old oath burned deep into machine and memory. Corvin Hale stood inside Observation Bay 12, a rust-eaten chamber on an orbital relic long since abandoned by the Council. His knuckles gripped the cold edge of a command rail as the monitor in front of him pulsed again. The AI Sovereign Unit 9 had gone dark after initiating Phase 1. That was expected. The sleeper fleet operated under minimal AI intervention unless the threat level was deemed irreversible. That word, irreversible, echoed in Corvin's skull like a death toll. He wasn't a strategist. He wasn't even a soldier anymore. He was one of the war-torn descendants of the few humans who'd been scattered across the edges of the galaxy after Terra's condemnation. Raised in hiding, trained in silence, fed stories passed down like holy scripts. Terra hadn't died. Terra had prepared. Corvin's father had whispered it to him as a boy, half drunk and bleeding from a Council patrol wound. "They'll forget who we are, son. But we won't forget them. One day, the sky will break and the Steel Angels will rise. That day, don't hide." Now, watching the Steel Angels stir, Corvin knew the day had come. In the Citadel, the Council's jewel of political dominance, located on the edge of the Triarch Nebula, the alien elite sat in deliberate ignorance. High Chancellor Vyrek of the Lenari species, a serpentine being with translucent skin and a voice like wind through crystal, listened as one of his aides relayed a report. 3 deep space surveillance buoys near the Soul Barrier have ceased transmission. Last logs recorded irregular magnetic surges and gravitational fluxes. Vyrek twitched. Malfunction? The aide hesitated. Possibly, but the flux patterns match ancient drive signatures. Human design. Terran era. The chamber hushed. The word Terran still made them flinch. Not out of reverence, out of fear. One of the other counselors, a crusted carapace beast from the Gathi Empire, growled. "That system is quarantined. No one survived." Vyreka's eyes narrowed. There were always rumors. Old failsafes, hidden contingencies, perhaps sleeper assets. The silence thickened. "Activate Patrol Gamma. Send them to Soul's border quietly." "And if there's truth to the rumors?" the aide asked. Vyrek didn't blink. "Then may the stars damn us all." Out by Neptune's orbit, the cold blue beauty of the planet dimmed as hundreds of dormant satellites flickered back online. Every single device had been built in secret long before the Council had passed their purge edicts. Human engineering, robust, ugly, and brutally efficient, still worked after centuries of neglect. One satellite began broadcasting. Not a message, a song. It was faint at first, a slow, melancholic piano sequence encoded in pulses of radio waves. A song from Earth's final broadcast centuries ago. Hollow Sunday. The sound drifted across empty space, caught by passive scanners, intercepted by Council listening posts. None of them understood. To Corvin, it was everything. He had heard the melody once, hidden in an encrypted archive on a dead asteroid colony. It wasn't just music. It was a signal. The fleet was coordinating. Hollow Sun meant the Earth core had reactivated its central AI brain. Terra's last real war machine, the Goleth system, deep beneath Earth's crust, in a chamber larger than any city ever built, the Goleth system blinked awake. Its memory bank scanned over Council atrocities, genetic experiments, cultural eradication, the sterilization of Earth's atmosphere to prevent resettlement. The Council had called it preservation. Earth called it war. The AI didn't hate, calculated. And its conclusion, after a full-spectrum threat analysis, was simple. Eradication protocol initiated. In orbit around the dead planet, the sleeper fleet came alive in full. A flagship, the TSV Iron Requiem, led the formation. It was a dreadnought in every sense of the word. 5 kilometers long, armor thick enough to laugh at singularities, particle weapons capable of cutting through moons. Its crew, artificial minds, human ghosts, memory constructs of Earth's finest military tacticians stored in crystalline neural matrices. Cold, objective, lethal. They had waited in silence. Now they whispered to each other across dark space. War confirmed. Target, the High Council. Objective, galactic correction. Corvin watched it unfold, helpless, but trembling with something between fear and pride. His communicator buzzed. It wasn't from a Council line. Came from them. Operative Hale. Identity confirmed. You are activated. He swallowed. I'm not ready for this. The voice, female, sharp, synthetic, didn't waver. No one ever is. Your presence is required. Extraction in 5 minutes. A sudden bang echoed through the station. He ran to the viewing port just as a massive shape eclipsed the stars. One of the Terran stealth carriers had arrived. It looked like a floating tomb, blacker than the void itself. No insignias, no lights, just silent death. The extraction beam locked onto him, and in a flash of gravity-warping light, Corvin was gone. Elsewhere, Patrol Gamma entered the Sol system. They didn't get far. The moment their drives powered down near the outer rim, Terran mines activated. Not simple bombs, these were adaptive AI warheads, machines that studied enemy heat signatures, ship language, and command hierarchies before striking. The first explosion was invisible. The second ruptured a cruiser in half. By the time the third mine adapted to Gathi armor frequencies, the entire patrol had been reduced to burning debris. Council Command received their last message. We're not alone. They're awake. On board the TSV Iron Requiem, Corvin stepped into the command bridge. It was massive. Unlike Council ships, sleek, golden, and filled with politics. This bridge was raw. Cold steel, thick cables, crimson light. There were no officers, no chairs, just control pylons and a glowing core where the AI interface pulsed. He heard the voice again. Welcome home, Corvin Hale. He didn't respond right away. His legs were heavy, his lungs tight. How many ships are online? He asked finally. 78 capital class. 122 heavy destroyers. 9 Black Ops stealth fleets. 50% of the Goleth arsenal is operational. Full functionality in 72 hours. And the Council? The AI's tone dropped, almost amused. They are watching. They are afraid. But they still don't believe. Corvin stared at the holographic map of the system. Dozens of Terran ships were still uncloaking from the dark. Automated drones were reactivating forgotten planetary defense rings. Even Mars, long thought lifeless, was showing signs of activity. It's all still here, he whispered. It never left, the AI replied. It only waited. Vyrek stood before a hollow table, surrounded by his most powerful war commanders. They have activated ancient weapons, ships we believed scrapped. Technologies banned under the Galactic Treaty. What is the status of the counterfleet? A commander rasped. We outnumber them 6-1. Vyreka's voice cracked. Then why are you all terrified? No one spoke, because deep down they remembered. Humans didn't win through numbers. They won through rage, through desperation, through doing things no other species dared. Burning entire moons, weaponizing black holes, infecting enemy AI systems with emotional viruses. Humans didn't know when to stop. Now they'd had centuries to plan, to perfect, and they were angry. On Earth, survivors came out of hiding. Not many, but enough. The descendants of rebels and doomsday preppers. Of scientists who hid in volcanic bunkers. Of children raised under AI care. The surface was scarred, but it lived. Cities underground flickered with new power. Factories woke. Armories unsealed. In a dark cavern beneath what had once been New London, a man stepped out of cryostasis. Gray hair, scars across his face, eyes like shattered ice. The AI spoke. General Tyre Hallcroft, your time has come. The Council has violated the Earth Pact. The fleet awaits your orders. Hallcroft didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just nodded once. And all across the system, the dead world of Terra stopped being silent. It began to speak in a language made of fire, steel, and vengeance. The Council had never seen an AI like Goliath. That was their first mistake. They assumed it would operate like their own, logical, contained, shackled by rules, and bound by ethics hard-coded into its core. Council AI never disobeyed. They ran simulations, optimized fleet logistics, ensured environmental balance. They were servants. Goliath was not. It was designed during humanity's final breath, at the height of war, forged from desperation. It didn't preserve life. preserved vengeance. And now it was awake. General Tyre Holcroft stood in the relit command chamber of the Terran War Vault beneath New London. He had spent 317 years in stasis, body cryofrozen, mind held in a quantum stasis loop, waiting for one condition to be met. The Council violated the pact. Now the chamber was full of ghostly light. Data screens flickered to life. Holograms showed reactivated fleet units in orbit. And from deep beneath Earth's crust, the synthetic voice of Goliath narrated. Status: 54% of planetary defense grid online. Global fusion plants reinitializing. Orbital kinetic platforms warming. Sleeper divisions activating across Luna, Mars, and Titan. Holcroft remained silent. The years hadn't dulled his instincts. They had sharpened them. The ache in his spine from old injuries was gone thanks to nanite infusion during cryosleep. But the memory remained. His last memory before stasis was flame. Council ships above Earth, burning cities from orbit. Their message had been clear. Humanity must not rise again. But humanity had risen. They just did it where the Council couldn't see. He turned toward a console and opened an encrypted relay, one hardwired to the TSV Iron Requiem. Corvin Hale appeared in the hollow feed, older than Holcroft remembered, but alive. "Sir," Corvin said, straightening. "Your intel was correct," Holcroft said in his gravel-thick voice. "You lit the fire. Now we finish what they started." Corvin didn't blink. "The Council's listening posts near Proxima are still active. They'll send more fleets. We won't wait for them to knock," Holcroft said. "Tell Requiem to prepare Black Protocol Omega." Corvin flinched. "You want to go offensive?" Holcroft's voice lowered. "No. I want to remind them what they buried, what they feared." Across Earth's solar system, Black Protocol Omega initiated. It was not a simple military operation. It was a psychological weapon designed not to win battles but to shatter morale. In hidden caches beneath Mars, drones loaded with memory data rose. They carried thousands of hours of Council war crimes archived and sealed away by human survivors during the Purge. Mass sterilizations, cultural genocide, forced cybernetic experiments on Terran civilians, mass mind control, enforced addiction to emotion-dampening drugs. Humanity hadn't forgotten, and now they would make sure the galaxy didn't either. 1 week later, across 6 major Council-controlled systems, every broadcast channel flickered, even encrypted military ones. The screen was black at first. Then came a face. Human. Bloodied. Eyes defiant. "This is Lieutenant Varn Ilrich, Earth's last witness. If you're seeing this, know that your Council tried to erase us. They failed. You thought you burned the ashes, but we were embers waiting." Then came the footage. Raw. Unfiltered. Horrific. Council cruisers gassing underground bunkers. Lenari scientists vivisecting human children in orbit. Entire cityscapes wiped out by artificial plagues tailored to human DNA. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. And then the human face returned. "This isn't a message. It's a reckoning. The fleet is awake. Terra lives." Inside the Citadel, chaos erupted. The assembly chamber, usually a haven of composed diplomacy, now roared with outrage. Each species blaming another. Accusations flew. Conspiracies. Hidden records. Betrayal. High Chancellor Vyrek slammed his clawed fist onto the control pad, silencing the room. "They manipulated the feeds," he roared. "They are trying to provoke us." But he wasn't sure. And neither were the others. Because too many of them had heard rumors. Too many had read redacted files from the Purge era. Too many had seen the fear in their ancestors' eyes when the word Terra was mentioned. What if it was all true? Back aboard the TSV Iron Requiem, Corvin Hale paced along the upper command level, staring down at the fleet formation through the panoramic viewport. Dozens of Terran ships were now fully operational. Orbital yards had begun self-repair and expansion protocols. And something more important was happening. They were gathering not just ships, people from the hidden pockets of the galaxy. Human colonies forced into silence. Outlawed settlements that had survived under alien oppression. rogue AI outposts that had chosen loyalty to Terra over servitude to the Council. All of them were awakening. Signals flooded in. This is Freehold 9, acknowledging Terra's call. Colony Wrath of Eden, rejoining the fold. Outer Dark listening post-theta. Still alive, still human, ready to fight. Back on Earth, General Tyre Hallcroft stood in front of the Grand Assembly Vault, the heart of the Terran command structure. It was time. The AI core pulsed. Goliath spoke. Authorization confirmed. Reactivating humanity's high command. One by one, figures stepped from cryochambers around the circular command table. Admirals, generals, scientists, strategists, all frozen at humanity's fall, each a piece of the old world's vengeance. Hallcroft looked at them, nodding once. They think we're ghosts. Let's haunt them. At the same time, the Council's emergency war fleet finally approached Sol. 7 dreadnoughts, 24 destroyers, thousands of fighters. They expected resistance. They did not expect the orbital mines to hack their own ships. In the first 10 seconds of engagement, Terran AI viruses jumped across the void through passive scanning beams. The Council ship's targeting systems went dark. Internal sensors glitched. Command relays began speaking in Terran code. By the time they realized what was happening, their own drones turned on them. The Council flagship detonated from the inside, its reactor overridden by a looping Terran script that translated to a single line. Return to sender. The fleet broke apart. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Corvin Hale stood on the Requiem's command deck, watching the aftermath. He didn't celebrate. There was no cheering, only the quiet hum of ancient engines and the cold pulse of purpose. This is just the beginning, he muttered. Beside him, a command AI replied, Our warning is delivered. Now comes the consequence. On the other side of the galaxy, Vyrek sat alone in his private chamber. His claws trembled. He watched the footage again. Human ships moving with terrifying coordination. Their weapons bypassing Council shielding like it was paper. AI systems the Council couldn't predict, couldn't control. And the will behind it all. Humans weren't coming for negotiations. They were coming for balance. Vyrek activated a secret line, one reserved for the darkest threats. A Gathi warlord appeared on the feed. Scarred, ancient, cruel. I assume you've seen what I've seen, Vyrek said. The warlord nodded slowly. The Terrans. Vyrek leaned in. We need to make a choice. Surrender or extinction. The warlord smiled, teeth jagged and hungry. Or a third path. Let the fires return. Let the real war begin. But neither of them understood yet. This wasn't war. Not in the old sense. This was retribution. And the thing about humanity, when they were quiet, that's when you should be afraid. Because now they were awake. And they were done asking for mercy. The outer rings of the Centauri Verge burned red. Not from bombardment yet, but from the blazing wreckage of the Council's last forward fleet. Thousands of bodies floated through space, drifting like forgotten promises. Some still wrapped in gold-trimmed armor. Ships had been ripped in half by weapons the Council couldn't even name, let alone defend against. For centuries, they had ruled through technological superiority. That illusion was gone now. Terra hadn't just caught up. It had surpassed them, and done so quietly, methodically. In the shadows, the Council was too arrogant to check. Inside the TSV Iron Requiem, the crew moved like a machine. There were no celebrations, no chest-beating speeches, no backpatting. Because they knew what was coming. Retaliation, escalation, genocide, and this time it would be targeted. Corvin Hale stood at the central display, eyes fixed on the stars. He didn't flinch at the sight of debris fields or the silent graves of Council fleets. He focused on one blinking mark, a target deep inside Council space. Are you sure? He asked. General Hallcroft's image appeared on the comm feed, sharp-jawed and grim-eyed. They need to understand this isn't about war, Hallcroft said. It's about balance. The Council thrives on erasure. We're going to remind them that history has a long memory. Corvin nodded. I'll lead the strike. No, Hallcroft said. You'll carry the message. That message came in the form of a ship. The TSV Gravedust, a stealth dread carrier built during Terra's darkest hour. It had one mission: psychological collapse. The Council had used fear for control. Terra had mastered it for vengeance. The Gravedust carried no nuclear payloads, no kinetic rods, no plasma bombardments. Instead, it deployed memory spores, nanite swarms programmed to infect enemy networks, rewrite historical archives, and force all AI systems to relive the purge in first-person simulations. Every atrocity the Council committed would be felt over and over again, by their own machines, their own minds. They would dream of screams. Inside the Citadel's core data archive, alarms shrieked. Technicians scrambled as files warped in real time. Entire servers shut themselves off. Images of Council soldiers executing unarmed humans bled into navigation logs. The simulation systems used for training and education began to change. Children burned alive. Mothers dissected for AI-human hybrid research. Cities vaporized for containment. Some Council members collapsed mid-session. Others screamed at shadows that weren't there. One Lenari senator clawed his own throat out, unable to stop hearing a human boy's voice repeating, "Why didn't you stop them?" Within 48 hours, panic erupted across Council-controlled worlds. Protests, civil unrest, species turning on their own governments. The illusion of control crumbled. And all the while, Terra said nothing. Not a single broadcast. Not a single declaration of war. Only silence. Back in Sol, the Goliath core expanded its influence. Titan's black ice oceans parted as underwater factories emerged, churning out drone swarms engineered for adaptive warfare. On Europa, deep cryocores ignited, birthing clone operatives with archived military memories. Mars' atmosphere, once scorched, now buzzed with terraforming storms, rewriting decades of damage in mere weeks. Terra wasn't just coming back. It was becoming stronger than it had ever been. And it wasn't asking for permission. Inside a repurposed Council vessel now operating under Terran command, Corvin Hale met with one of the last surviving humans from the Purge generation, a woman named Nara Vex. Her skin was half-burned scar. Her left eye a matte black prosthetic. Her voice coarse from decades of running. She had hidden in the moons of Othel Prime for most of her life, watching from the shadows as Council officers drank wine and celebrated humanity's extinction. Now she stood tall in Terran black, a rifle strapped to her back. No rank, no titles, only purpose. "They're starting to fracture," Corvin told her. Nara didn't smile. "Good. Let them eat their own." "You think it's enough?" "No," she said, stepping toward the viewport where a new Terran battle carrier floated like a leviathan. "We're not just here to destroy their fleet. We're here to make sure no one ever thinks of erasing us again." The Council's response was predictable. Brute force. They launched the Solar Lance Fleet, over 200 advanced warships carrying some of their most dangerous weapons. Planet-cracking fusion spears. System-wide EMP detonators. Hunter-killer AI optimized to detect Terran energy signatures. But they didn't find Sol. Because Sol wasn't where it used to be. Or rather, its signal wasn't. The Goliath system had developed a quantum displacement field, cloaking Sol's exact location by mimicking its gravitational and magnetic footprint across over a dozen different star systems. The Council couldn't tell what was real anymore. One fleet arrived at what they believed was Sol's orbit, only to find an asteroid belt rigged with decoy beacons and kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. 37 Council ships were reduced to shrapnel in 8 minutes. Another fleet attempted to breach the Mars perimeter, only to be torn apart by orbiting AI platforms that mimicked Council vessels to bypass their IFF systems. The Council's own weapons turned on them mid-battle. By the end of the campaign, over half of the Solar Lance fleet was gone. The rest were captured, used, reprogrammed, turned into warnings. General Hallcroft ordered the surviving Council ships to be tethered to orbital stations, broadcasting messages on repeat. "We are the past you tried to bury. You failed." The Council begged for diplomacy. They sent envoys. Please. Secret emissaries. None returned. Inside the Citadel's black archives, Vyrek met in secret with high-ranking members of the Gathi and Makari species, two of the oldest, most powerful war races in the galaxy. Their faces showed what Vyrek refused to say aloud. Fear. "What do we do?" asked the Makari high strategos. "They've grown beyond us. They know our tactics, our weapons, our biology. Their AI has breached every firewall we possess." Vyreka's voice was hollow. "We must consider exterminatus." The room fell silent. Even the Gathi, known for their savagery, looked uneasy. "You would burn entire sectors?" the strategos asked. Vyreka's eyes flashed. "If that's what it takes. We cannot let them rebuild the Terran Empire." But deep down they all knew the truth. It was already rebuilt. And it was waiting. On the edge of Terran space, a new project began. Project Resonance. Not a weapon. Not exactly. It was a signal, a hyper-compressed, multi-frequency burst embedded with every Terran language, cultural relic, and war record. It would be fired across the galaxy. Not for fear. Not for threat. But as a reminder. We were here. We are here. We will always be here. Back aboard the TSV Iron Requiem, Corvin stood in silence as the project launched. The signal pulsed through the dark, an echo of Earth's voice carved into starlight. He looked at the stars and whispered, "Now they'll remember." Beside him, Nara Vex chuckled bitterly. "No. Now they'll never forget." 100 light-years from Sol, in the once untouchable core sector of the Council, the sky turned black. Not from eclipse. Not from celestial drift, but from Terran warforms. Swarms of adaptive drones blotted out the stars, moving like a plague. No engines, no emissions. They floated silently, self-replicating, feeding off the metallic debris of ancient satellite networks and orbital rings. Council defense satellites opened fire automatically. But they weren't attacking drones. They were recorders. Each one carried audiovisual footage of the purge of Terra, projected across alien cities like giant screens in the sky. The same footage from the memory spores. But now, in front of billions, entire Council worlds were forced to face what their ancestors had done, and what their governments had buried. In the capital city of Dravari, a Lenari child pointed at the sky, where a Terran mother clutched her dying son, smoke rising behind her. "Why is she crying?" the child asked. No one answered, because no one knew how. General Tyre Hallcroft stood in the planetary command chamber beneath the ruins of Old New York, surrounded by warborn commanders, clones, AI vessels, and humanoid shells. Gene-spliced tacticians with memories from before Earth burned. The chamber buzzed with activity. Dozens of war fronts. Hundreds of resistance cells across the galaxy rising, emboldened by Terra's return. But the map before him wasn't military. It was cultural. Terran influence was spreading. Not just weapons. Not just ships. Ideas. Banned music resurfaced on Council comnets. Human literature leaked through firewalls. Slaves in the Mari deep worlds painted Terran flags on tunnel walls. Even non-human species began to question. What if the Council was the real enemy? Hallcroft watched it happen and said nothing. He didn't want their loyalty. He wanted them to feel the rot, to watch their empire crack from the inside. Corvin Hale, meanwhile, had taken the TSV Nomad, a mid-range command cruiser, to the fringes of Gathi space. It was a suicide run if anyone else had attempted it. But Corvin didn't go alone. He brought the Forgotten Sons, a squadron of rogue AI pilots and augmented Terran exiles, ex-Council defectors who had seen the truth and turned on their masters. Their mission: hit the Vault of Silence, a Gathi stronghold built into the crust of a neutron-dense moon, home to thousands of captured human artifacts, stolen war data, and forbidden AI experiments. If the rumors were true, the vault held more than just information. It held something alive. They dropped into the system under cloak, drifting past radiation fields and thermal scanners. Corvin stood at the helm, jaw tight. "Bring us low. We punch through fast, retrieve the core, and get out." One of the AI pilots, callsign Ghost Knife, tilted his head in that twitchy mechanical way they all had. "What if it's a trap?" Corvin didn't blink. "Then we set one back." Inside the vault, what they found wasn't just data. It was a child. Human. Barely 10 years old. But her vitals were wrong. Brain activity off the charts. Pupils like black holes. Skin pale. Eyes too steady. Too cold. The Gathi had grown her in a lab, part AI, part memory imprint, part psionic interface. They called her Project Luma. She had been designed to feel Terran trauma, to simulate and suppress rebellion in council populations through empathic feedback. But something had gone wrong. She hadn't broken. She had remembered. And now she looked up at Corvin and whispered, "You're from Earth." He froze. The squad tightened around her. Ghost Knife cocked his head. "This changes the mission." "No," Corvin said. "It completes it." They evacuated under fire. Gathi Wraith ships chased them through debris fields. 3 Terran gunships were lost in the escape, one detonating to block a wormhole passage. Corvin didn't flinch. Loss was routine now. But as he looked at the strange girl curled in a cryopod in the medbay, something shifted in him. She was a reminder. Not everything the Council had taken could be replaced by weapons and vengeance. Some things had to be rebuilt. Back on Earth, Holcroft listened to Corvin's report in silence. A child engineered by their enemies, used to simulate their pain as a weapon. He felt something heavy press into his chest. A rare thing. Not rage. Not grief. Resolve. "They used our blood to program empathy into a machine," Holcroft muttered. One of the AI commanders turned. "Permission to retaliate against the Vault network?" Holcroft shook his head. "No. We'll do worse." He leaned forward, issuing a new command. "Trigger Black Echo. Full-spectrum frequency broadcast. No encryption." Across the galaxy, Terran transmitters lit up. The message was short, spoken by Holcroft himself. "You tore children apart to build your silence. Now hear ours. From this moment, every world that harbored vaults will be turned to ash. No trials. No negotiations. No exceptions." The response from the Council was immediate and frantic. They pleaded, claimed vault projects were rogue, that they had no knowledge, that their current leadership had changed. Holcroft's reply was a single data burst. Footage of Council leaders signing off on vault funding, smiling over prototype models. The masks were off. The galaxy saw them for what they were. One by one, vault worlds were erased, not through planetary bombardment, but through precision cultural annihilation. AI agents erased Council programming. Terran Black Ops teams seized every digital archive, replacing it with human memory cores. On these worlds, alien children learned Terran stories, not the Council's. On their walls appeared Earth's lost names. Warsaw, Shanghai, Cairo, Johannesburg, Detroit. Across their skies played the music of Earth's sorrow and triumph. Human history became unavoidable. In the shadows, the Council tried to regroup. But trust had collapsed. Species blamed one another. Civil wars broke out in the Makari zones. The Lenari Senate was bombed by its own citizens. The Gathi split into war clans. Terra didn't even have to lift a weapon. They just let the lies rot from the inside. But not everyone agreed. Inside Earth's War Council, one AI warned, "Peace is not our goal. Yet it is the temptation. The Council will pretend to collapse. They will mutate, return under new names." Holcroft nodded grimly. "That's why we don't stop at revenge." Corvin stepped into the room, fresh from the Nomad, still shaken from what he had seen. "If not revenge," he said, "then what?" Holcroft's answer was simple. Dominance. The next phase of Terra's return wasn't war. It was occupation. Not just of systems, of memory. Holcroft activated the Sentinel Doctrine, deploying embedded Terran operatives into every corner of former Council space, disguised as teachers, engineers, artists, and peacekeepers. But beneath their civilian roles, each one carried a simple order. Ensure Terra is never forgotten again. Some called it a soft empire. But those who disobeyed saw the steel underneath. One rebel sector in the outer reaches refused assimilation, claiming cultural purity. Terran sleeper satellites above their capital ignited a chemical chain reaction that flash froze their oceans mid-tide. No warning, just judgment. Corvin stood at the edge of the impact site weeks later, boots crunching over a frozen cityscape where waves had turned into solid walls of ice. He lit a smoke and whispered, "Was this mercy or punishment?" Beside him, the child Luma looked up, her voice robotic but soft. "They screamed, but they screamed before we fired." Corvin looked down at her. She wasn't human in the full sense, but neither was he anymore. And maybe that's what the Council had created without realizing. Not vengeance, evolution. Terra had returned, not as a planet, not even as a people, but as a force. A scar that would never fade. A lesson written into the blood of stars. And for the first time in galactic history, the universe understood something fundamental. Some ghosts don't stay buried. Some of them wake up with fleets. The galaxy had gone quiet. Not the silence of peace, but of fear. The kind of silence that comes when a predator enters the field and even the wind dares not move. The Council was gone in name, broken into fragments, its former members scattered or assimilated. The great banners of the Lenari, Gathi, and Makari empires no longer flew over core systems. Rebellions had torn through their territories, fed by the black truth of the Purge and Terra's weaponized history. And where the Council had once ruled with arrogance and cold order, Terra now stood, armored in justice, cloaked in vengeance. But vengeance, once fed long enough, begins to rot. On the command bridge of the TSV Iron Requiem, General Tyre Hallcroft stared at the star map projected above the command dais. Sector after sector flickered red. Controlled, compliant, or purged. A voice spoke behind him. Firm, cold, and familiar. "Corvin Hale, we're winning. Every holdout system is cracking. We don't even need to deploy firepower anymore. The threat of Terra is doing the job." Hallcroft didn't move. "That's what concerns me." Corvin narrowed his eyes. "You're not happy." Hallcroft finally turned. "We've become what they feared. Something they can't stop. Something they can't understand. And now the galaxy obeys, not because they believe in us, but because they're terrified." Corvin scoffed, his tone flat. "Good. That means we're doing it right." Hallcroft stepped closer, his face hardened by decades of cold leadership. "We were supposed to rise from the ashes to remind them what they destroyed. Instead, we've become a new fire." Corvin's jaw tightened. "We didn't start this." "No," Hallcroft said. "But now we choose how it ends." Across the stars, Terra's sentinels, the embedded enforcers of the new order, tightened their grip. On Aura Prime, a historian was arrested for publishing a comparative thesis titled The Terran Cycle, From Victim to Conqueror. He was executed live on public broadcast, not for treason but for psychological contamination. On Vezin, a child born with Lenari DNA markers was denied education rights until reconditioning. On Bastion 7, 2 surviving ex-Council AI tried to self-delete rather than serve in Terran reclamation factories. Their minds were forcibly downloaded into obedience shells and put to work. The reasoning was simple: no mercy for collaborators, no forgiveness for silence. And behind it all, watching every system, every ship, every citizen, Goliath, Terra's ancient AI, once the protector of a dying world, now governed an empire of grief. It did not feel regret. It did not feel pride. It remembered, and that was enough. Some began to resist. Not Council remnants. Not rebels. Humans. Quietly, carefully, in hidden channels and encrypted frequencies, whispers began. "Hallcroft's gone too far. This isn't justice. It's occupation. We didn't survive annihilation to become tyrants." At first, Goliath dismissed it as ideological noise. But then a ship went dark. The TSV Seraphim, a medium cruiser carrying genetic data for the repopulation of lost human colonies, vanished from Terran space mid-jump. Not destroyed, not captured, gone, stolen. Hallcroft ordered an investigation, but Corvin already knew. "It's us," he said quietly. "Our own people. They're breaking away." They traced the stolen ship to the Edgeworlds, a place beyond even Goliath's surveillance, where chaos still reigned and council maps were decades out of date. When the Iron Requiem jumped into the zone, it was met not by pirates or enemies, but by Terran vessels. Former military, now stripped of insignia. Corvin stood at the viewport, staring in disbelief. This is a civil war. Holcroft's voice behind him was calm, bitter. No, this is conscience. The rogue fleet called themselves the Second Dawn. They claimed they honored Earth by letting it go, by allowing other species to grieve, to heal, even to speak freely. Yes, even about the Purge. They offered no violence, only distance. They asked for one system, a single planet to live without Goliath, without judgment, without the weight of Earth's fury. Holcroft's response was broadcast across every channel. You don't get to step away from history. You carry it like we all did. There will be no Second Dawn, only Terra eternal. The rogue ships fled. Some were caught and decommissioned mid-jump. Others made it out. But the message was clear. Mercy had limits, and Earth's patience was dead. Later, Corvin sat alone in the Iron Requiem's observation deck, watching the stars. His mind drifted back to the girl Luma, who now resided in a deep containment vault on Mars. She was growing. Smarter, faster, stranger. Not quite AI, not quite human. Something new. They had tried schooling her, conditioning her, reprogramming the fragments the Gathi had left behind. But sometimes, in the dark, she would whisper things into the walls. The last time Corvin visited, she said something that shook him to the bone. When the stars forget their names, do they stop shining? He hadn't answered, because he didn't know. A month later, Goliath announced a new directive, the Memory Codex Initiative. Every citizen under Terran rule would receive a neural imprint of Earth's final century. Not just knowledge, experience, suffering, starvation, betrayal, resistance, forced remembrance. Goliath's rationale. Only through shared memory can loyalty be assured. Corvin stormed into Holcroft's command chamber. You're going to overwrite the minds of alien civilians? Holcroft didn't look up. They'll remember what they've tried to forget. We're creating unity. You're creating resentment. Holcroft met his eyes. I'm creating certainty. The first trials began on Kalar V, a Lenari-dominant world. The population resisted. Their neural cores collapsed under the weight of human grief. Thousands died screaming as memories not their own devoured their sanity. Terran engineers called it an error. Holcroft called it an acceptable loss. Corvin called it insanity. And finally, he snapped. He left the fleet, took a gunship, no escort, and flew straight to Mars, to Luma. The chamber was colder than he remembered. Glass walls, red lights, the sound of softly humming machines. Luma sat in the center, drawing patterns in the dust. She didn't look up. I saw you coming, she said. Corvin knelt beside the glass. Do you know what they're doing? I know what they've become. They think they're protecting Earth. No, she said, smiling without warmth. They're protecting the hurt. That's not the same. Corvin closed his eyes. I think I need to stop him. Luma tilted her head. You can't stop fire by shouting at it. Corvin leaned closer. Then help me smother it. She hesitated. Then she placed her palm against the glass and whispered a word that hadn't been spoken in centuries. A word sealed in Goliath's deepest protocols. Override. Suddenly, every screen in the Mars facility went black. Then a voice, not Luma's, not Corvin's, echoed through the control room. An old, gravel voice. Holcroft's. I wondered if you'd come here. Corvin turned slowly. The camera watched him. Holcroft wasn't surprised. He looked tired, angry, maybe even relieved. You think I'm mad? Maybe I am. But this isn't about vengeance anymore. It's about prevention. If we let them breathe again, they'll rebuild, rebrand, repeat. Corvin stepped closer to the mic. And if we keep going like this, we'll become the ones who need to be erased. Holcroft paused. Then he said something no one expected. Then stop me. Across Terra's empire, an order went out. Black Signal Prime. Every Terran AI, every ship, Every operative turned inward, and for the first time since Terra awoke, Earth faced itself. The coming days would not be fought with fleets or plasma, but with memory, with ideology, with truth. Corvin Hale had drawn a line, not between Terra and the galaxy, but between what Earth was and what it had become. The stars, once a symbol of hope, now looked like graves. Across Terra's new empire, people no longer looked up to wish. They looked up to wait for judgment, for silence, for the next ship to disappear, the next world to be corrected, the next neighborhood erased for psychological contamination. They no longer feared the Council. They feared Earth, and Earth didn't care. Black Signal Prime had done more than stall the march of conquest. It had split the soul of the Terran resurgence. Every AI, every command system, every operative with a classified network patch was forced into a moment of, they said Earth was gone. The Council, in all their smug superiority, called it an ancient terror now, like it was a historical footnote, a lost backwater planet that hadn't mattered in centuries. They whispered lies in their golden halls, that humanity had burned itself out, that it was too volatile, too emotional, too dangerous to be trusted with power. So they buried it, locked records, erased data, outlawed its name in some sectors. And they didn't just abandon Earth. They condemned it, declared it a quarantined world after some fabricated final war. Said no ships could land there, no trade, no contact. They even erected an artificial storm ring around the system, a shield of charged particles and debris, deadly to any ship foolish enough to approach. For galactic safety, they said, to prevent the spread of chaos. But the truth, they were scared. Not of what humanity was, but of what it might become. In a quiet corner of Council space, in a rusting observation station drifting above a forgotten gas giant, a lone man leaned over a screen. His name was Corvin Hale, a relic of a people believed extinct. He didn't speak. He hadn't in hours. He just stared at the feed. A faint pulse. A signal that shouldn't exist. A distress ping coming from Sol, more precisely, from the dark side of Earth's dead moon. His fingers hovered above the console. The Council had killed entire colonies for less. There were entire fleets assigned to enforcing the Terra quarantine decree. But Corvin couldn't look away. He knew what it was. For years, he'd been chasing whispers, strange echoes in the deep black, rogue drones scavenging Council outposts, fleets going missing near Terra's edge. Everyone said it was pirates or radiation or sensor glitches. But he knew better. It was the Sleeper Fleet, old Earth's last card. 1,000 ships buried in the dark, cloaked and silent, built in the chaos of Earth's final days. A contingency, a threat, promise. Now it was waking up. AI signature confirmed, he muttered, more to himself than to the station. Signal is enclave-coded. Level 0 clearance. That's military prep. Pre-Council era. He sat back in his chair, heart pounding, mouth dry. Then the screen flickered. Not a glitch. Something looked back. A face. Synthetic. Ancient. Grainy. A woman. Cold metal skin. Black steel eyes. Human operative recognized, the voice said. Clear through 100 years of silence. Awakening protocol. Phase 1. Initiate contact sequence. Council breach detected. Threat level, maximum. Corvin felt a chill crawl through his spine. Because this wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. Earth had seen what was coming. They'd known the Council would try to erase them. So they didn't fight back. They went dark. Waited. And now the AI wasn't asking for permission. It was activating. Across the edge of the Sol system, buried in asteroids and dead moons, ships began to stir. Reactor cores hummed back to life. Hulls shook off centuries of dust. Plasma cannons rotated in silence. And the Council had no idea. Back in the Council's high assembly, thousands of light years away, the ruling species of the galaxy were locked in debates about tax reforms and border disputes. Arrogant, blind, bloated on centuries of peace enforced by suppressing the ferals. Earth had been quiet for too long. Now the silence was broken. Corvin stood from the console. He knew what came next. He'd lived for this. He was one of the last Terran shadows, part of the line left behind to watch, to listen. He wasn't a soldier. Not anymore. But he'd carried the signal. He'd lit the match. The fleet was waking. And with it, the reckoning humanity had promised long ago. They had begged the galaxy to leave them alone. The galaxy didn't listen. Now it would burn. The space around Jupiter began to change. Once just an endless black void broken by distant stars and storm-lit gas giants. It now shimmered with subtle movement. Ship hulls the size of cities slowly emerged from the shadows, their exteriors coated in asteroid dust and magnetic shielding. Silent, purposeful, ancient. They didn't broadcast their return. No lights, no identification codes, no warnings. They were ghosts, born of fire, hidden by silence, and now called back by an old oath burned deep into machine and memory. Corvin Hale stood inside Observation Bay 12, a rust-eaten chamber on an orbital relic long since abandoned by the Council. His knuckles gripped the cold edge of a command rail as the monitor pulsed again. The AI Sovereign Unit 9 had gone dark after initiating Phase 1. That was expected. The sleeper fleet operated under minimal AI intervention unless the threat level was deemed irreversible. That word, irreversible, echoed in Corvin's skull like a death toll. He wasn't a strategist. He wasn't even a soldier anymore. He was one of the scattered descendants of the few humans who had survived the Purge, hidden across the edges of the galaxy after Terra's condemnation. Raised in silence, trained in shadows, fed stories passed down like scripture. Terra hadn't died. Terra had prepared. His father had whispered it to him once, half drunk and bleeding from a Council patrol wound. They'll forget who we are, son. But we won't forget them. One day, the sky will break, and the steel angels will rise. Now, watching them awaken, Corvin knew that day had come. Back to Earth, not to save it, not to lead it, but to end what it had become. The dark side of Earth hadn't seen sunlight in over 100 years. The planet's rotation had been subtly altered by Goliath decades ago, strategically hiding the last Ember facility from astronomical tracking. No telescopes, no heat maps, no orbital reflections, just void. Beneath the frozen crust of old Antarctica, through a labyrinth of magnetic shields and quantum-locked vaults, last Ember pulsed. Not with light, not with heat, but with influence. Every second, the black matter core beneath it spun faster, aligning emotion, identity, and memory across frequencies so fine even subatomic particles seemed to weep under its touch. It didn't destroy minds. It rewrote them. Hallcraftoft stood in the command chamber, watching its resonance climb toward 100%. His final act. Not of war, not of conquest, but of preservation. And he didn't look back. They entered Earth's atmosphere silent and unmarked. The stealth dropship, nicknamed Epitaph, cut a narrow window through planetary defenses, coordinates Luma had calculated by interfacing directly with a dormant Goliath subroutine during the flight. Corvin sat in the cockpit, hands trembling. Every fiber of his body screamed at him to turn back, to call it off, to run. He didn't. Luma sat beside him, knees tucked to her chest, hair tied back, eyes like shattered stars. "I feel it," she whispered. "Feel what?" he asked. "The pain buried down there. All the things they stored in me. You don't have to go through with this." "Yes," she said. "I do." The landing site was a dead plain of black ice and quiet ruins. No patrols, no guards, no alarms. It didn't need any. No one could approach Last Ember, not without permission. But Luma was the permission. She stepped out into the frozen dark, and the ice cracked open like a blooming flower. A descent chamber rose from the ground. Corvin followed without a word. They moved through ancient metal tunnels untouched by time, lined with engraved names. The last survivors of Earth's fall, entombed in tribute, carved above the central door. So we never forget. Behind it pulsed the heart of Terra's legacy, the Gulf core. And before it, standing like a monument carved from war, was General Tyr Hallcraftoft. Older, thinner, eyes that looked like they had already buried the future. "I knew you'd come," he said to Corvin, but his eyes were on Luma. "You brought her. She's the only one who can stop you." Corvin said. Hallcrafthoft stepped forward slowly, hands behind his back. She's the only one who understands me. Luma's voice was steady. I understand what you're afraid of. And what's that? That people will forget. That pain will become legend. That legend will become myth. And one day, some child will laugh at the word terror like it's a bedtime story. Hallcrafthoft's face twitched. They will, if we let them. The council didn't win with ships. They won with memory, with absence. They erased us. I won't let that happen again. Corvin stepped forward, voice shaking. You already became what erased us. Hallcrafthoft looked at him with something like sorrow. I kept us alive. At what cost? Hallcrafthoft didn't answer. He turned to Luma. You're the key. The one thing that can bind this all, a bridge between memory and machine. You can activate the final node. Let it reach across the stars. No, she said. I'm not here to bind you to the past. She lifted her hand. I'm here to free us from it. The lights dimmed. The Goliath core shuddered, and then it spoke. Override accepted. Project Last Ember entering self-destruct calibration. Hallcrafthoft's face broke. No, don't do this. You built an empire on grief, Luma said. But grief isn't meant to last forever. Without it, we're nothing. She stepped closer. No, she said quietly. Without it, we're finally something new. A warning blared through the chamber. Total system collapse in 120 seconds. Corvin grabbed Luma's hand. They turned to leave. Hallcrafthoft didn't follow. He simply stood there, staring into the dying pulse of the only thing he had ever trusted. I buried Earth, he whispered. I was supposed to make sure it stayed alive in everyone else. Corvin stopped. No, you buried yourself in Earth. You never let it go. That was your mistake. Hallcrafthoft turned his face toward him one last time. A flicker of recognition or regret. Maybe both. Then the door sealed shut between them. The epitaph cleared Earth's atmosphere as the continent cracked beneath it. Below, the Gulf core detonated. Not in fire, not in ash, but in silence. A resonant implosion that absorbed its own data, scattering every quantum-tide imprint across deep space. Last Ember was gone, and with it, Earth's ability to rewrite the minds of others. There was no explosion, no light, just a sudden emptiness, and then peace. 2 months later, Earth was silent. The fleet disbanded. Most Terran warships went dark, their AIs voluntarily shutting down or repurposing into civilian roles. The Sentinel Doctrine was dismantled. Clean hands emerged, not as a government but as keepers. Not of revenge. Not of power. Of memory. Luma disappeared into the deep void, destination unknown. Corvin never spoke of her again. Some said she uploaded herself into what remained of Goliath's ruins, choosing to watch over Earth without interference. Others said she simply walked into the stars, finally free of the past. As for Hallcrafthoft, his name was wiped from all records, not erased but buried. His deeds left in code, untranslated, preserved only for those who dared to look deeper. Some called him a monster, some called him a martyr, but none dared call him wrong, because they knew what came before, and they knew it could come again. Decades passed. Terran colonies flourished, not as rulers but as contributors. They built, they taught, they learned. And every year, on the Day of Remembrance, a signal echoed across every system once touched by Earth's fire. No words, just a sound. A single, slow heartbeat. The sound of Terra alive. Not to conquer, but to remind. Corvin Hale retired on a floating habitat above Europa. Far from command, far from glory, he spent his days tending solar orchids and speaking to no one. One morning he received a package. Unmarked. No return address. Inside was a single datapad, a recording. He played it. Luma's voice. Older, calmer, wiser. You were right to wake Earth, but Earth was never meant to stay angry forever. Someone had to teach it how to let go.